The Aberfan Disaster, 1966. The Aberfan Disaster, one of the most harrowing tragedies in modern British history, occurred on October 21, 1966, in the Welsh village of Aberfan. A catastrophic collapse of a coal waste tip sent a torrent of debris into the village, engulfing a local school and homes. This preventable tragedy claimed the lives of 144 people, including 116 children, leaving a community shattered and a nation mourning. Aberfan, situated in South Wales, had long been a village tied to the coal mining industry. The nearby Merthyr Vale colliery became a central feature of the community's economy, but the coal mining operations brought not only economic reliance, but also lurking danger. For years, coal mining in the area had produced large amounts of waste material, known as spoil. The National Coal Board, NCB, which owned and operated the colliery, deposited this waste in massive artificial mounds, or tips, on the hillsides surrounding Aberfan. The waste tips consisted of unusable debris such as rock, shale, and slurry. They were poorly managed, with little thought given to long-term stability. The most dangerous of them, Tip 7, was placed directly over natural underground springs. The villagers had expressed concerns about Tip 7 for years, warning that it could become unstable, but these fears were dismissed by the NCB. Despite repeated warnings from residents and workers, nothing was done. In the days leading up to the disaster, heavy rainfall saturated the area, causing the coal waste in Tip 7 to destabilize. At approximately 9:15 a.m. on October 21, 1966, this towering mound of slurry gave way. Around 140,000 cubic yards of liquefied debris surged down the hillside at an unstoppable pace. The avalanche struck Pantglas Junior School just as children had settled into their morning lessons, destroying it almost entirely in seconds. The slurry continued its devastating path, crushing several homes along Moy Road. The physical destruction was almost total, but the emotional impact proved even more profound. By the time the torrent subsided, 144 lives had been lost, including 116 young children aged between 7 and 10. The school, meant to be a place of learning and safety, became a graveyard for its students and teachers. Another 28 adults also perished in their homes. The scale of the loss was unimaginable for a small, close-knit village like Aberfan, where nearly every household was directly affected. In the immediate aftermath, Aberfan's residents, local miners, emergency workers, and volunteers rushed to the scene. Armed with shovels, buckets, and bare hands, they struggled to dig through the thick, heavy debris in the desperate hope of finding survivors. Tragically, while a few children and adults were rescued in the early moments, most had already succumbed to the suffocating slurry. The grief on rescuers' faces mirrored the growing realization that the disaster had left few survivors. Aberfan's sense of devastation was palpable. Many families buried multiple members, and the rows of small coffins at mass funerals became a lasting image of this tragedy. The community, once centered on coal mining, now had to navigate an overwhelming loss that the industry itself had caused. The sheer scale of the disaster demanded answers. A public inquiry, led by Lord Justice Edmund Davies, was convened to uncover the cause of the tragedy. The tribunal's findings were damning. It placed full responsibility for the disaster on the National Coal Board. The NCB's neglect and decision to prioritize cost-saving measures over safety created the conditions for the collapse. Perhaps the most haunting aspect of the inquiry was the revelation that the disaster could have been prevented. Evidence showed that villagers and some NCB employees had voiced concerns long before October 1966. Despite these repeated warnings, the NCB failed to act, dismissing the fears of Aberfan's residents as alarmist. The tribunal condemned the NCB and made scathing criticisms of its leadership, especially its chairman, Lord Robins. Robins, who displayed a shocking lack of empathy, attempted to minimize the board's failings even in the face of overwhelming evidence. Unbelievably, no criminal charges were pressed, and Lord Robins retained his position, a decision that exacerbated the community's anguish. The NCB's initial compensation offer to bereaved families was a paltry £500 per victim, a figure that outraged the public. The sum was eventually increased under pressure, but the gesture came too late to repair the damage. A disaster relief fund set up for the survivors and the community raised £1.75 million, equivalent to around £30 million today, thanks to donations pouring in from across the UK and beyond. However, even this fund became a source of contention. Incredibly, the government insisted that £150,000 from the relief fund be redirected to pay for the removal of other dangerous waste tips near Aberfan. The demand was widely criticised as cruel and unnecessary, adding insult to the injury of an already grieving population. It was not until 1997, over 3 decades later, that the Labour government formally reimbursed the funds. The tragedy's impact extended far beyond Aberfan. The sheer horror of the event spurred significant changes in the way coal waste tips were managed across the UK. Stricter regulations were introduced to ensure that such negligence could never endanger lives again. To honour the lives lost, a memorial garden was established on the site of Pantglas Junior School, offering a quiet place for reflection and remembrance. Annual commemorations ensure that the names and stories of the victims, particularly the children, remain alive in collective memory. Aberfan's loss became a somber symbol of the need for vigilance and accountability. The Aberfan disaster remains a stark reminder of the consequences of corporate negligence and the prioritization of economic gain over human life. It also stands as a testament to the resilience of the Aberfan community, which came together not only to mourn, but also to demand changes that would prevent others from suffering a similar fate. The Aberfan disaster offers invaluable lessons that continue to resonate today. First, it underscores the dangers of ignoring safety concerns in the pursuit of profit. The relentless drive for economic efficiency, particularly in hazardous industries, can have catastrophic implications when oversight is neglected. Secondly, it highlights the importance of heeding warnings from those directly affected by potential dangers. The voices of residents and workers, who often possess first-hand knowledge of risks, must not be dismissed. Aberfan serves as a powerful example of how listening to communities can save lives. Finally, the tragedy underscores the importance of collective responsibility and the role of governments and corporations in protecting communities. The public response to Aberfan, the donations and outpouring of grief, demonstrates immense compassion, but it also reveals how institutions can fail their citizens. The Aberfan disaster was an avoidable tragedy, born of corporate negligence and exacerbated by indifference to the warnings of a vulnerable community. While its aftermath brought grief beyond measure, it also led to critical safety reforms and a deepened national awareness of the consequences of neglect. Today, Aberfan's story remains etched in British history, not just as a reminder of what was lost, but as a call to protect future generations from the failings of the past. The resilience shown by Aberfan's people and their commitment to honouring the memory of the 144 lives lost stands as a beacon of hope and purpose amidst unimaginable sorrow.